Give me the stick, now.
Sir, I need that to walk. I'm visually impaired.
I don't care what you need. That is evidence in an investigation. Put it down or I put you down.
What Officer Dale Prewitt did not know, what he could not have bothered to check, was that the man whose cane he just ripped out of his hands had spent 22 years teaching constitutional law at Ohio State University. Within 4 hours of this footage hitting the Columbus Police Department's internal review portal, the Deputy Chief's office was already fielding calls from the university's legal team. The Ohio chapter of the ACLU had been briefed. A civil rights attorney in downtown Columbus had pulled Prewitt's full disciplinary record before dinner. By the following morning, it wasn't just Prewitt's job on the line. It was the city's money, its federal oversight status, and the careers of every supervisor who had ever looked at Dale Prewitt's file and signed off on it anyway. Thus, before we go further, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the moment this officer realizes exactly who he put his hands on. Dale Prewitt was 43 years old, 17 years on the Columbus PD patrol officer, never promoted, and not for lack of trying. His colleagues had a phrase for it. They called Dale enthusiastic. What they meant by that, what they said quietly after shifts, away from the cameras, was that Dale had a habit of finding problems that weren't there and creating situations out of nothing. He was not lazy. He was the opposite of lazy. He was relentlessly, exhaustingly active in all the wrong ways. Over his career, Prewitt had accumulated 9 citizen complaints. 4 of them involved black men. 3 involved individuals with visible disabilities. None had resulted in formal discipline. His supervisors had reviewed each complaint. Each time, they found his actions within policy. 14 months before the Transit Hub incident, a wheelchair user named Terrence Holloway had filed a formal grievance after Prewitt demanded he prove he actually needed his chair during a stop near Broad Street. That complaint sat in a folder in a lieutenant's office for 11 months before being quietly filed as unsubstantiated. The folder still existed. Investigators would find it. Prewitt's partner that morning was Officer Sasha Yunt, 31, 4 years on the force, recently transferred to the East Side Transit Detail. Yunt was described by supervisors as professional and non-confrontational. What those words actually described was someone who had learned to keep her head down and her radio keyed to Prewitt's channel. Yunt stood 6 feet to Prewitt's left when the cane came out of that man's hand. She did not step forward. She did not say a word. She reached for her radio, then didn't press it. Later, investigators would study exactly how long that pause lasted. It lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds where she saw everything and chose silence. It was a Tuesday in late October. Clear sky, temperatures just cool enough to feel like a real fall morning. The East Side Transit Hub was busy, commuters moving through, a few delivery workers, a cluster of students with backpacks too big for their bodies. Prewitt stood near the south entrance, coffee in hand, watching the crowd. Most people got a glance, some got a longer look. The man in the navy suit with the white cane got something different. He got Prewitt moving. Our Professor Raymond Osei, 54 years old, had been legally blind since his late 30s. Glaucoma, progressive, irreversible. He'd adapted his entire professional and personal life around it with the kind of systematic, methodical grace that defined everything he did. The navy suit was deliberate. He dressed professionally every day he went to campus, not to impress anyone, because he had found, over years of navigating a world that often underestimated him, that the way he presented himself affected the way people responded. He understood this not as vanity, but as data. His cane, a rigid graphite model, custom-fitted, had been with him for 11 years. He knew exactly where his hand met the handle. It was not an accessory. It was structural. Osei was heading to campus to lead a 1 p.m. seminar on Fourth Amendment protections, specifically the limits of investigative stops under Terry v. Ohio. His students were second-year law students. The class had been on the syllabus since August. He'd taken the transit hub route instead of calling a car because the weather was good, and he liked the walk when his schedule allowed. He had a transit card. He had his faculty ID in his inside jacket pocket. He had his phone set to audio navigation. He was not running. He was not agitated. He was a professor walking to work. Osei had a daughter at Ohio State, pre-med, second year. He'd been a single father since she was 9. He'd written a brief to the Ohio Supreme Court when she was in middle school. He'd taught his constitutional law seminar through 3 different university presidents, 2 recessions, and 1 pandemic. He did not think of himself as a person who drew attention. He thought of himself as someone who moved through the world quietly and carefully and asked to be left alone to do his work. He had never been arrested. As Osei cleared the south turnstile and moved toward the exterior walkway, Prewitt stepped directly into his path. "Hey, stop moving." Osei stopped. His cane touched the ground twice in quick succession, a steadying habit. "Good morning, officer. Is there something I can help you with?" Prewitt looked him up and down. "That stick. I need you to hand it over." "You hear me? Hand it to me." "Sir, that's my mobility aid. I'm visually impaired. I use the cane to walk." "I didn't ask for a medical report. Set it down." No reason. No greeting. No acknowledgement that this was a human being who had just said the word impaired. Just the command, delivered in the flat tone of someone who expected it to be enough. "We've had reports of individuals using walking aids to conceal items. You match a description." "What description? I'm a professor at Ohio State. I'm on my way to teach a class." "That's a real interesting thing to say. You got ID." "I have my university faculty credentials, yes, in my inside jacket pocket. I am going to reach for them slowly." "Don't tell me how you're going to move. Just do what I say." The body cam catches the exchange at a slight angle. Every word is audible. The transit hub continues to move around them. As Osei reached for his ID, carefully, slowly, telegraphing every motion, Prewitt muttered something to Yunt. The body cam audio caught it clearly. These people always got a story. Yount said nothing. The body cam kept rolling. Osei's hand found his faculty ID. He held it out. "This is my Ohio State University faculty identification. My name is Raymond Osei, Department of Constitutional Law." Prewitt took the ID, looked at it, handed it back. "This doesn't tell me what's in the cane." "Nothing is in the cane. It's a mobility aid. I'm legally blind." "I don't know that." Prewitt said, "Sir, I've shown you my identification. I've explained my condition. I am in full compliance. On what legal basis are you detaining me?" "Don't quiz me. I asked you to surrender that item, and I'm still waiting." Prewitt reached out and closed his hand around the cane shaft, just below where Osei's hand gripped the handle. He pulled. Osei did not let go immediately. Not out of resistance, because his brain had not yet processed that a law enforcement officer was physically removing the object keeping him upright. Then it registered, and he released. And the ground came up. Without the cane, Osei's balance went instantly. His right foot crossed his left, trying to compensate. His shoulder dropped. His briefcase hit first, a flat slap on the transit hub tile, then his left knee, then the full weight of his body. The sound carried. A woman 30 feet away turned around. A teenager with earbuds pulled one out. A transit worker behind a glass partition stood up from his stool. Professor Raymond Osei lay on the floor of the East Side Transit Hub in a navy suit that cost $400, surrounded by scattered papers from his constitutional law seminar, while the officer who had just removed his cane watched from above. The body cam recorded all of it at 11 frames per second in unbroken sequence, with the timestamp visible in the upper left corner. "Stay down! Don't make this worse!" Prewitt barked. "Officer, I am injured. I need medical assistance." "You fell because you didn't comply. That's on you." Osei began gathering his papers from the floor. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a combination of adrenaline and the pain radiating from his knee and palm. He moved methodically, carefully. Prewitt did not offer a hand. He stood with the cane in his grip and watched. The transit worker, a heavy-set man named Gerald Fitch, pushed open the partition door and walked out onto the floor. "Sir, what are you doing? That man can't see. He needs that cane." "Step back. This is a law enforcement matter." "He's on the ground. You knocked him down." Two commuters had stopped. Both had their phones out. A young woman was already recording. Prewitt pointed at her. "You want to be part of this situation?" She kept recording. Prewitt keyed his radio, turning slightly from the gathering crowd. "Yunt, subject was non-compliant with a lawful equipment check, fell during the interaction, says he's got a medical condition." Then, quieter, half turned away, but not far enough. These guys always got a condition when they want to make trouble. The body cam caught every syllable. 11 frames per second. War Transit Hub Supervisor. Donna Reinhold had been watching the situation develop from the operations window for 3 minutes before she made the call. When she came through the south door and saw Osei still on the ground, still without his cane, she stopped walking and just looked at Prewitt for a moment. "Officer, that man said he is visually impaired. Can you explain what is currently happening here?" Prewitt started to answer, and something in the transit hub shifted. The energy of the space, the weight of the phone cameras, the sound of Gerald Fitch still standing 6 feet away, not moving. Something in that moment told a 17-year veteran that this particular Tuesday morning had just become something he had not planned for. Reinhold looked at Prewitt's hand, then at the cane in it, then at Osei, who was now in a seated position on the floor, one hand pressed to his knee, watching in the direction of voices because he couldn't see Reinhold. He was tracking the conversation by sound. Reinhold spoke to Prewitt. "Give him back his cane. I'm still conducting an investigation. I'm not asking you to stop your work. I'm asking you to give a visually impaired person the device he needs to stand up. Now." 3 seconds. Then Prewitt extended the cane toward Osei. Osei's hand found it on the second sweep. Reinhold crouched beside Osei and spoke quietly. He showed her his faculty ID. She looked at it. She looked at his cane, the graphite shaft, the specific grip, the white color that is a universal marker under the Americans with Disabilities Act. She looked at his knee, which had a tear in the fabric now, and something dark spreading through it. "Are you injured, sir?" Reinhold said. Professor Osei responded, "Yes, my knee and my palm. I'd like medical attention, and I want this documented." "It already is," said Reinhold. Reinhold stood and turned to Prewitt. "What description did this gentleman match?" Officer Prewitt answered, "We have standing intelligence about—" "What description? Specifically?" Reinhold interjected. Prewitt looked at his partner. Yunt was studying the floor. Professor Osei spoke loud for everyone to hear. "He told me I matched a description of individuals using walking aids to conceal items. I would like to know which report generated that description and when it was filed." The transit hub went very quiet. Gerald Fitch crossed his arms. The woman with the phone hadn't put it down. Osei spoke without raising his voice. He didn't need to. "Professor Osei, How many people did you stop this morning at this hub? Because I've been here before, and I've never seen you stop the man with the umbrella, or the woman with the rolling cart, or anyone else with something in their hands. Nobody in that hub said anything. Prewitt's body cam had been running the entire time. The audio was clean. The question was on tape, hanging in the middle of a transit hub in Columbus, Ohio at 11:31 in the morning. Reinhold called for transit medical. She also called the Columbus PD non-emergency line and requested a supervisor respond to the hub. While they waited, she asked both officers for their badge numbers. Yunt gave hers immediately. Prewitt took a moment longer. I want an incident report filed. I want the body camera footage preserved. I want the names of both officers and any witnesses documented. The professor said, Supervisor Reinhold. I'm handling all of that right now. Officer Prewitt. He's making a big deal out of Professor Osei. Officer, I teach Terry versus Ohio. I know what a lawful stop requires. You had no articulable reason to stop me, no basis to demand my mobility aid, and no justification for the physical contact that caused my fall. I am telling you this not because I'm angry, but because you should understand exactly what is going to happen next. Prewitt said nothing. The body cam kept rolling. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Prejudice and being power drunk is a dangerous combination and should not be allowed in any way. Like and share the video if you agree. While Columbus PD, Sergeant Alfonso Briggs arrived at the hub at 11:48 a.m. He reviewed Osei's credentials, spoke with Reinhold and Fitch, and watched 40 seconds of Prewitt's body cam footage on the preview screen. Then he keyed his radio. This is Briggs at East Side Transit. I need Lieutenant Caraway here directly. We have a documented ADA violation and potential use of force incident involving a university faculty member. A pause on the radio. Repeat that last part, the voice said. You heard me. Please come now. Sergeant Briggs responded. By noon, Ohio State University's Office of Legal Affairs had been notified. The call came from the university's campus security coordinator, who had been contacted by a colleague who had seen a social media post from someone in the transit hub. The young woman's footage was already moving. The ACLU of Ohio received a tip from a transit worker before 1 p.m. Professor Osei's attorney, a woman named Vivian Thacker, whom he called from the medical center where they treated his knee, had the full incident timeline reconstructed before the afternoon was out. By 4 p.m., the Columbus PD Internal Affairs Division had formally initiated a preliminary inquiry. By 6 p.m., the city's ADA Compliance Office had opened a parallel review. The Columbus City Attorney's Office received a preservation letter for all body cam footage and communications related to the incident before the business day ended. 3 tracks, running simultaneously, before Prewitt had even written his incident report. That night, Prewitt sat at his kitchen table and watched the phone. His partner had texted him twice. He hadn't replied, and the local news had picked up the story. The Chiron read, Columbus officer confiscates blind professor's cane at transit hub. Video surfaces. His phone buzzed. Yount texted, they're pulling our cams, said it's administrative while they review. Prewitt set the phone face down on the table. He had filed his incident report that afternoon. He'd described Osei as non-compliant, and the fall as the result of the subject losing his footing. He had believed, somewhere in the part of his brain that had been doing this for 17 years, that this was how these things worked. You wrote it down. People moved on. But the woman with the phone had posted her footage to 3 platforms. A law school alumni group had shared it into a thread with 12,000 members. The body cam footage was already in the hands of Internal Affairs. For the first time in 17 years, Dale Prewitt understood that the paperwork was not going to fix this. Internal affairs investigators moved quickly. Within 48 hours, they had pulled every body cam recording from Prewitt's previous 6 months of shifts. They pulled the 9 prior complaints. They pulled the Terrence Holloway grievance from its folder. They pulled Yunt's camera from that morning and analyzed the 4-second pause frame by frame. Transit Hub security cameras provided 4 independent angles. The young woman's phone footage provided a 5th. Gerald Fitch gave a written statement. Supervisor Reinhold gave a written statement. 2 commuters gave written statements. The ADA Compliance Office reviewed Prewitt's prior contact with the wheelchair user near Broad Street. They found it had never been properly investigated. They flagged it for federal ADA review. The facts did not require interpretation. They simply accumulated. Columbus Police Chief Nora Stanton released a statement 48 hours after the incident. It confirmed that body camera footage showed a deeply concerning interaction and that the department was conducting a full and unimpeded internal affairs review. It expressed support for OSE and acknowledged that the department had a responsibility to protect the rights of all residents, including those with disabilities. In a closed meeting with city attorneys that same afternoon, she was more direct. "And Chief Stanton, we have an officer who removed a blind man's cane because he felt like it. We have that on 4 cameras. We have prior complaints we didn't act on. And we have a plaintiff with a law degree who knows the relevant case law better than most of our attorneys. I need you to understand. We are not in a position to fight this. Our job now is to determine what accountability looks like." Professor Osei gave his formal statement to internal affairs investigators 8 days after the incident. He wore the same Navy suit. He was calm in the way that people are calm when they have spent years teaching the precise legal framework that applies to what just happened to them. He walked through the encounter point by point. He described the moment Prewitt took the cane. He described the fall, the specific sensory experience of losing orientation without visual or physical reference. He described the floor, the sound of his briefcase, the papers. He described what he chose to do and why. I did not raise my voice. I did not resist. I had spent 22 years teaching students what happens to black men who are perceived as threatening by law enforcement during a stop. I was not going to become a case study in my own seminar. So I stayed calm. I identified myself. I complied. And I was still on the ground. He paused. That's the thing I want documented most. That compliance was not protection. The Internal Affairs Preliminary Report, completed 19 days after the incident, found the following. Professor Osei had been fully compliant at every stage of the encounter. No legal basis existed for the demand to surrender his mobility aid. Prewitt's stated justification, reports of individuals concealing items in walking aids, was not supported by any active intelligence bulletin or prior incident report on file. The physical contact that resulted in Osei's fall constituted an unauthorized use of force. Prewitt's recorded comments demonstrated a pattern consistent with prior complaints of racially disparate treatment. Officer Yunt was cited for failure to intervene under department use of force policy. Both officers were placed on administrative leave pending further review. Their credentials were temporarily suspended. 12 days later, the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division sent a formal letter to Columbus PD, notifying the department that a compliance review had been opened under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Violent Crime Control Act. The review would examine not only the Osei incident, but the department's broader patterns of contact with disabled individuals. The city's legal team read the letter on a Friday afternoon. They did not have a good weekend. The outcomes were announced publicly 6 weeks after the incident. Dale Prewitt was terminated from the Columbus Police Department for unauthorized use of physical force against a person with a disability, removal of a federally recognized mobility aid without lawful authority, documented racially discriminatory conduct captured on department body camera, and providing a materially false account in his official incident report by mischaracterizing Osei's fall as accidental. His Ohio Peace Officer Training Commission certification was revoked. Under the revocation terms and the federal review findings, he was barred from employment in any law enforcement capacity in the state. Ohio's officer decertification database, now linked to the National Registry, carried his name and the grounds for decertification permanently. He was 43 years old. He had 17 years in. He would not finish 20. Officer Sasha Yunt was terminated for failure to intervene in a documented rights violation and for certifying a body camera report that did not accurately reflect the incident. Her certification was suspended for 1 year, effectively ending her tenure at Columbus PD, and then making employment at any other department in Ohio during that period impossible. In her exit interview with Internal Affairs, Yunt reportedly said she had known, in those 4 seconds, that what Prewitt was doing was wrong. 4 seconds. That was the cost of saying nothing. 3 supervisors who had reviewed and cleared prior complaints against Prewitt received formal discipline. 1 lieutenant was required to retire. A sergeant was demoted. A 3rd supervisor received a written reprimand that would remain in their file permanently. The Columbus Police Department entered into a settlement agreement with the DOJ requiring mandatory ADA compliance training for all patrol officers, a revised citizen complaint intake process with mandatory disability accommodation protocols, and quarterly audits of use of force incidents involving individuals with disabilities for 5 years. Professor Osei's attorney, Vivian Thacker, filed suit in the Southern District of Ohio against Officer Prewitt, Officer Yunt, the City of Columbus, and the Columbus Police Department. The complaint cited violation of Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Fourth Amendment unlawful seizure under 42 U.S.C., Section 1983, and 14th Amendment equal protection violations. The evidence package included 5 video angles, 2 audio-enhanced body cam transcripts, the complete internal affairs report, 9 prior complaint files, and an expert witness who had consulted on ADA law enforcement compliance for over a decade. The city settled for $1.5 million before the case reached trial. The money was significant. The record was more significant. For Dale Prewitt, the decertification entry meant that any background check run by any law enforcement agency in the country would return the same result: terminated for racially discriminatory conduct and unauthorized use of force against a disabled individual. No department in Ohio would touch him. The National Registry made sure no department anywhere else needed to. His incident report, the one where he wrote that Osei lost his footing, was entered into evidence as Exhibit 14. The judge read it aloud during the settlement approval hearing. For Yunt, the ending came not in a courtroom or a termination letter, but in a form processed by a human resources clerk on an unremarkable Wednesday, and a reputation that would travel with her resume everywhere she tried to go. The Ohio State University's College of Law held a brief formal acknowledgement for Professor Osei at the start of the fall semester. His department chair, a woman who had known him for 14 years, spoke plainly. Raymond handled this the way he has handled everything in this building for 2 decades, with precision, with composure, and with the law on his side. The system failed him in that transit hub. What came after is what the system is supposed to look like when it corrects itself, not because the moment was loud, but because the evidence was undeniable. Osei nodded once. I just wanted it documented. The following October, 1 year after the incident, Professor Raymond Osei walked through the south entrance of the East Side Transit Hub. Same route, same navy suit, Same graphite cane sweeping the tile in slow, even arcs. And nobody stopped him. Nobody looked at his cane. Nobody asked him to prove anything. He made his 1 p.m. class. The seminar topic, as it happened, was the same as the year before. The limits of investigative stops under Terry versus Ohio. His students had done the reading. The discussion ran long. 30 minutes to 30 minutes. Warning/legacy. Inside the Columbus PDADA compliance training module, the one mandated by the federal settlement, there is a section on lawful contact with individuals who use mobility aids. It includes a case summary. No names are printed in the training document. Just facts, a legal outcome, a dollar figure, and a still frame from a transit hub body camera, a navy suit, a white cane on the floor, and a timestamp reading 11:22 a.m. The officers who cycle through that training don't need names to understand what they're looking at. The careers that ended are the point. If this case stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to see what accountability actually looks like. Subscribe so you're here for the next one, because what we're uncovering in our next story is somehow even harder to watch. If you love this story, the next story is a must-see. It raises a question that the department still hasn't answered publicly. That story is coming. You'll want to be subscribed when it does. Bye for now.